Well, this is our second edition of The Patch, live from the E3 show floor. We have two very special guests with us today, Mr. Levar Burton, and our good friend Mika Burton.
Hi.
Hi, Mika.
You may know from such places as the internet. We have you on a bunch of stuff. You joined the Achievement Hunters in a bunch of our content.
I have.
You were just on the spot.
I was. That was so much fun. You guys are so warm and welcoming. I love coming by and doing stuff with you guys.
I cannot tell you how bizarre it is to see my daughter doing a game show.
He watched it. It's awkward.
I love game shows, and you were actually very good on the spot.
Thank you.
Absolutely were.
Yeah, dude, that's a show that John Reisinger puts on, and when he pitched it, I was like, I don't know, we'll do like one or two of those. Now it's one of our most popular shows that we have on. A cool experience I had was watching you guys. We said this before when we talked over there on the side stage. You two are some of my favorite periscopers.
Thank you. We haven't periscoped yet. We have to do that eventually.
We have not, but we will be periscoping in a little bit.
I love it because it's like such a fun, like it's almost like an organic conversation.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite moments on there ever was you busting out the Geordie LaForge visor and putting it on.
That was a huge. I mean, people really enjoyed that. That was a pretty big moment for the fans.
That was your first Periscope.
That was my very first Periscope.
We were all having a dinner party, and I was talking about Periscope.
Yeah.
And he was like, you know what?
Let's
give
do it.
Yeah, well, there was an amazing moment. I don't remember because you guys were all doing it at the same time. I don't remember if it was yours or yours, but somebody took the visor and put it over the lens of the camera, and you could see what it looked like.
That was him.
Through the visor, and I've always wondered what that view was like.
Bernie, when you come over, we will put the visor on you.
I can't take it.
Bernie, now you gotta.
Put the visor on?
Bernie, now you gotta.
Let's go. Once the match is over. That would be the ultimate like
all of
geek
you
moment.
For coming.
E3 is over. Goodbye, everybody. We're going home.
We'll do that. We will definitely do that.
So, Levar, let me ask you a question, if I may. So your career, the first thing that I was familiar with that you were in was Roots.
Yes.
The miniseries Roots.
Yeah.
Or the epic miniseries. And then, of course, Star Trek The Next Generation was a huge as well. Were you always into gaming, kind of geek culture, or did Star Trek kind of interject that into your life?
I was a Star Trek fan long before I joined the Star Trek cast. And I guess geek culture has always been a part of my life, even before geeks started inheriting the Earth.
Nerd.
I've always been...
Mika.
I didn't say anything.
Teasing it.
Who needs assassins when you have family members on the couch with you? I've always been that kind of guy. I like technology and gadgets, and I love the world that we actually get to live in the future right now, and I think it's very cool.
I know, it's crazy. Like they have behind the scenes for Star Trek The Next Generation, and they have like the overlays for the displays and the control panels and everything else. It's the fake version of that now isn't as good as what we have in real life sometimes.
Right. That's right. That's
the props that even like these unbelievably talented artists build, what you have in your hand is like better than that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, we've been to E3 now. This is for you and I together.
You and I together. This is our second year. This is my fifth E3 or something like that.
So every year we've come, there's been an evolutionary leap in the sophistication of the technology, the rendering abilities of the 3D worlds that people are creating. It's really phenomenal.
Yeah.
We were talking about this today, Bruce, where I said it's such a weird experience to come to E3 because standing here, everything in my line of sight would have been the best thing in the world 10 years ago.
Right.
Like even like a cinematic right there would have been the best animated film 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, it's just crazy to
That's
think
how fast the world
it's
was moving.
Right.
Yeah. And technology too, like communication and everything else.
And there's always something new that surprises you. Like HoloLens is still one of those things that's now capturing people. Just that augmented reality. Like we've seen it in movies, and now they're making it.
Yeah, where it's like I see it and I still don't believe it. It's like it's right there and I don't believe it.
I wanted to ask Levar and Mika if you guys have had a chance to try the HoloLens yet.
We
Not
haven't.
yet.
I
Not
think
yet.
that's our
I've
next
heard.
stop.
I've heard it's like as good as it gets for right now, and I'm very eager. We've sampled a little of the VR here, but the HoloLens apparently is what's up.
Somebody, I gotta say, somebody is missing a major marketing opportunity with you being here, and they're not having you put on their visor.
Maybe that's why I haven't been over there yet. I don't know.
Still working it out. But you talk about technology and the way things move. One of the biggest revolutions, I think, in the last few years has been crowdfunding.
Yeah.
We did a big crowdfunding campaign last year.
Very successfully.
Very
for Lazy Team.
successful.
Yep. And we were following very closely in the footsteps of your Reading Rainbow one, which was, I think, closed probably a month before we started.
That's right around there.
So you're just at a year since the crowdfunding campaign.
It's been a little over a year now, and to give you an update, we have just released Skybrary, which is our app library service, all of our books, all of our videos on the web. If you remember, Bernie, the Reading Rainbow Kickstarter was about access, getting to every child everywhere with the Reading Rainbow product. And so getting to the web has been really important for us. So we are now available on the web browser. You don't have to have a tablet. Only 30% of our audience has access to a tablet computer. 83% of the people in this country have access to the web. And if you're from a family that doesn't have access to the web at home, you certainly have access to the web for your child in their school. And come September, our EDU product, Reading Rainbow for Classrooms, will also come out. So we've made great strides since the Kickstarter raise, and I'm very proud of what we're doing, and I'm very proud of the fundraising community, the crowdfunding community for helping us get to where we are.
It was really amazing, and I was so proud to see when it went through so quickly. And that heartfelt video that you put up when you hit your goal so quickly, that was amazing. Yeah. And I think it's really interesting to hear you talk about how you're going to reach people.
Yeah.
You know, the original Reading Rainbow, there's no question it would have been television, syndication.
Right.
Now it's tablets, web.
Absolutely.
That's how you reach people now.
You know, television was some technology that gave us access to the audience of kids in the 80s. And if you want to reach kids today, and our mission is to be effective, you really need to be in the digital realm. Our goal is to meet kids where they are and then take them where we want them to go, which is obviously to the written word.
Do you think the crowdfunding campaign is something you might do on an ongoing basis?
We might do another one at some point for another aspect of the business to, again, increase our footprint, grow what it is we're doing. We see that our value in the marketplace can extend beyond the agency of reading, and once we firmly establish ourselves in our sweet spot of reading, we want to expand to older age groups. I'm asked all the time, when are you going to do a Reading Rainbow for adults? Right? There are so many things that we'd like to do. We want to be the enrichment company, that company where parents can know that it's the right place for their kids and the fun place when the kids get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mika, for you, I mean, things have changed so much. You're a college student.
I am, yeah.
And I mean, even the thought of, like, you know, obviously you have a famous family here with a long career in entertainment. I don't know if your plans are to follow in the footsteps of entertainment, but even if you did, it seems like entertainment is so different now from when your dad started his career.
I was actually having this conversation with my dad, and I think my mom was there too, talking about the work that I've been doing with you guys and how entertainment is just different now. How it's like Rooster Teeth and YouTube is the new face of entertainment, I feel. It's just taking off. Like years and years ago, no one would think that people would, you know, thousands and hundreds of thousands of people would tune into the internet to watch something.
Right.
But now, you know, Netflix has Netflix exclusive stuff. Everything's on the internet. It's not just TV anymore. So like, I am following in his footsteps of entertainment, whether it be acting, but I don't care if it's on the internet or if it's on TV and movies. Just somehow, some way, I like entertainment.
Yeah, you're right about the original series. It's crazy. The thing that really brought it home for me was BitTorrent announced that they were going to have original series on BitTorrent. And they were going to, and they were raising money for it. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
You think I could pirate it?
I know, right?
They would love that, I'm certain.
That's incredible. The pirating network is for making an original series? What?
Yeah. So they're just a distribution model.
Raising funding.
And they're raising money.
Interesting.
Well, what are you guys hoping to see? Anything else you want to see before you leave E3?
Well, speaking of being a college student,
Yeah.
question for you.
Oh, God.
Which game are you going to pre-order after you leave E3? Is it going to be Fallout 4, Star Wars Battlefront? Which one have you seen that you're like, I'm buying that one?
I know which one he's going to answer.
For
Honor.
There
you go.
We just played it.
Incredible. That's a game for me.
Incredible.
That is definitely a game for me.
Can we get you to play against the Achievement Hunters? Because it's a 4v4 game, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
He needs to
I need to
brush up a
practice. I'm gonna go home.
Not against them, you don't.
No, I was the last person alive on our team. He needs to practice.
Oh, really?
I left her. The last time I saw her, she was being surrounded by a gang of knights.
They were
Yeah.
nice or like
It
peons.
happens.
No, they were really good. They knew what they were doing. I took down a few, but
I played against the developers. I swear they cheat.
the developers always cheat.
Right.
So
they know
look
the
good.
dirty tricks.
But I did impress the Assassin's Creed Syndicate people.
Oh,
She had
nice.
a very, very, she
Good
got
work.
very, very complimentary. The one of the developers of the new Assassin's Creed game took her through a demo, and he was very impressed with her.
He stopped
her
demoing
skills.
after a while. He's like, okay, never mind.
Yeah?
Yeah, he was like, you know what you're doing.
So you'd be a good QA tester.
Yeah.
Get everybody through it.
Yeah.
Mika, what about you? What are you gonna pre-order? Fallout 4? Is that you?
Definitely Fallout 4.
Okay,
I'm
good.
looking at that nice special edition.
Oh, yeah, the
huge
Pip-Boy.
thing. Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
but also Assassin's Creed. Like,
Oh, okay.
hell yeah.
That's your
Assassin's
thing.
Creed.
All right.
That's my thing.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, well, where can everybody find you if they want to keep up with you guys?
I'm at Mika Burton, Mica, and then Burton on Twitter and on everything pretty much. So I'm all over the net, just my name.
I just do the Twitter thing.
Yeah.
So you can find me in the Twitter sphere at Levar Burton.
And I cannot
And on the
recommend
Periscope.
enough. You
And-
should
oh,
follow
Periscope,
them both on
yes.
Periscope.
Yeah.
I'm on
Yep.
Periscope.
Just
at
our
LeVar
names on
Burton.
Periscope.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go Periscope, man.
Let's go
All right,
Periscope.
we're gonna
Hey,
go
thanks
Periscope.
for coming by, guys. It's always a pleasure to see you. Always.
for having us.
Yeah.
Great to see
Thank you so much.
Thanks now.
I'll see you
So
guys.
good to see you.
Yeah, we need to learn to ride a bike.
Yep.
I'm trying.
Okay, it's becoming a joke. It's like, we're going to teach you how to ride a bike. I have stuff.
Well, you'll have to come back to Austin when it hasn't rained for 40 days in a row.
Do you know the history of this? Because when apparently I traumatized her.
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah, you know the story then.
The way she described it to me, she said, "Well, I was on the bridge of the Enterprise growing up, and I couldn't learn how to ride a bike on the bridge of the Enterprise." I'm like, "You poor baby."
My dad was always gone.
Thank you, Bernie, for stepping in.
Well, everybody should learn to ride a bike at some point in their life. So
You're right.
it's a deficit we'll help correct.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Bernie.
Great to see you guys.
Thank you.
All right, well,
guys.
next up, he's getting mic'd up, and we're going to have Jeff Gerstmann from
Excellent.
Giant Bomb up here in just a
Yay!
second. A true veteran of gaming journalism. Oh, here he is, already come up. This is Jeff Gerstmann, everybody. Hey.
Hello.
Like,
Hey,
look
Jeff.
at this.
Hi, how are you?
And with that, I
how's it
think we
going?
kick off an episode of The Patch and talk about video games.
Here we go.
Video games.
Video
Finally.
games.
What E3
Am I right?
is this for you?
How many E3s have there been?
I think
This
there's
is
been 21.
21.
Yeah, I believe there's-
So 21.
You've been to every single E3?
Yes.
That's amazing.
How different is it now than the first E E3?
It's bigger. It's way more mainstream. That was sort of the early years of E3. We're kind of getting into that era where all the companies went public and went real corporate and kind of got real big and boisterous along those lines. And it was nice to have a place that was just games, because before that, games were at CES, the Consumer
Right.
Electronics Show, and they
Well,
were just
weren't they
in
were
a
with the
tent
porn,
in
right?
Vegas and just like out in the middle of nowhere, and yes,
What-
right, very close to the porn.
Yeah, Todd Howard
haven't-
said in the
Yeah.
Bethesda
So-
presentation.
Same time every.
So he was, yes,
He was
the porn
proud
was
that
right
Blizzard
there.
was closer to the porn.
Right.
And I was 16 going to CES, so the porn section was pretty cool. And also, like, you look back at it now, and it's actually sad and desperate in a lot of ways too. But
Did you pretend you're like, no, I'm going for the games?
yeah, I had to tell my mom, like, hey, it's like maybe I'll get a job in this gaming business thing. We'll go to this show, and then yeah, like the porn awards are happening. There was a guy who had he was a guy who did public relations for a company, had the same name as a male porn star. So he would go to CES and just his phone was ringing off the hook. No matter where he stayed, someone would eventually find his room and just start calling him all the time. And it's a shame, but also probably for the best in some ways that they
Audition.
separated. Yeah, audition, exactly.
What was his name? I'm curious.
Tom Byron.
Tom Byron. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be like,
Ron Faramir.
TT Boy.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
Hold on.
Yeah,
Why
exactly.
don't I look up his work now?
Yeah.
That'll be your search history forever. I can actually relate to that because we started making video back in 2001,
Uh-huh.
the web before YouTube, and when nobody was really making video, there was Flash stuff like Homestar Runner.
Right.
But I would always have to explain to people at dinner parties, I make video for the internet, not pornography.
Yeah.
It's like I had to qualify constantly.
Not
I
pornography,
still
but
do
also
that
kind of
sometimes.
pornography.
A little bit. It's like geek porn.
Sure.
Whenever I tell people that I work in online video, I'm like, what are they thinking right now?
I know.
They think it's a fake job. I'm just letting you know now.
Oh,
They think
okay.
it's totally fake. And
Yeah, it's like, oh, you work for the internet.
Yeah,
like, that's a real thing.
That means nothing.
I'll just start telling them I'm like a social media maven, or what's the word that people use?
Maven. That's it.
Is it maven? I
Yeah.
nailed it.
Guru.
Guru,
Oh,
yeah, that's
there
another
we
one.
go. Guru's the one I was thinking of.
Social media guru. But it's really bad when someone is a self-described social media expert or guru. That's when you know you're really in trouble.
That's the LinkedIn page you don't look at. You don't
Nope.
click on that one.
Just keep moving.
Yeah.
You go to your third connection down, and you're good. Yeah, when we got started, I was always been grateful to YouTube once they got going. I'm talking about them like they're this like nascent thing, but when they got going in 2006 and became this enormous worldwide phenomena, it made it way easier for me to explain at a dinner party what I do for a living. That went from 20 minutes to about 10 minutes. So I really appreciated YouTube for that.
Yeah, well, it's still real hard sometimes to say, because we say, like, oh, well, I write about video games. And they say, you write video games? And no, I write about video games. And now that's not even accurate anymore. It's like, now I stand in front of a camera and talk about video games, or in front of a microphone, and like it's getting harder in some ways for people to kind of wrap their mind around it.
Right. I participate in the culture surrounding video games.
Yeah.
That's what we do a lot. It's like not even about the video games itself, but more like all the people who enjoy video games, we make content for those people.
Right.
Not necessarily video game centric.
And it's I feel like it's still even changing beyond us. Like Bernie's youngest is 10, and he experiences video games completely differently than we experience video games. Like he can tell us the kinds of just mind-boggling trivia about video games that he's never played. Because he consumes all this content. He spectates video games almost as much as he plays them.
Watch it on YouTube or anything like that.
Twitch,
Yeah, see, I had to like read magazines and just try to like rent games and just get as much stuff into my brain as possible to kind of go down that rabbit hole back then. It was harder.
So let me ask you about that. Somebody who's a longtime veteran of games journalism, YouTube tends to be a fairly younger audience, and one of the main questions you hear a lot, how do I get started?
Right.
Because YouTube's as big a platform as it is, it presents a challenge for discovery. We talk about a number of people watching things, but the number of people uploading content is enormous as well. Every minute, 300 hours are uploaded.
Exactly.
It's a huge noise floor. So how did you get going? I know times are different now, but how did you get started?
It's one of those things where when I got started, it was a relatively small, and I worked for a print magazine for a year. But I had a friend who was reviewing games for the local newspaper. He was in high school, named Glenn Rubenstein. He works for Leo Laporte now at TWiT. And he had been writing about games for the newspaper. And he was like, I'm going to go to this CES thing. You want to come? I'm like, yeah. So we went. I met Mr. Byron. And also met Andy McNamara from Game Informer, he's still there. He's been there. Just kind of meeting people and talking to them and kind of getting into it. And worked at a print magazine for a year that put out like 3 issues and folded. And then I was like, well, all right, 19, jaded, fired. What am I going to do? Thought about finally like, well, maybe I should try this college thing out. But right before I started applying and going down that road, I ended up getting in at GameSpot, and that was in '96. And then it's been online pretty much ever since.
I would read you guys all the time. I mean, coming up in the late '90s, maybe you and IGN were the only people out there.
Yeah, and it was it was this weird moment where I mean, you look at it, it's kind of happening again right now to a certain extent. If you look at kind of the business side of stuff, where it wasn't our goal, but along the way, as our websites got bigger and bigger and bigger, print magazine anymore. A monthly print magazine was crazy in a business that was suddenly daily, hourly. And now I think you have a lot of those large websites that still exist, but now stuff like people on YouTube that are talking about games, people that are live streaming themselves with game coverage, podcasts, Twitter, all this other stuff is pulling people away from those sites that have been around now for 20 years.
Yeah.
They might not need to exist in the same way anymore because the next generation is coming along and kind of making that format obsolete.
Jeff, just recently you asked a question that blew up the internet.
Yeah.
And honestly, I thought it was a very valid question. It's something that we've talked about a lot in terms of early access games and things like that. What made you want to ask Phil Spencer that question? I mean, that honestly, because like I said, very valid.
Well, I mean,
first of all, can you fill us in on the question?
Yes, please.
Well, we were on our show at GiantBomb.com last night. We had Phil Spencer and Kudo Sonoda from Microsoft on. They started talking about their kind of version of Steam's early access, and they're going to let people kind of check out games before they're done. And that's been hit and miss on Steam. So there have been games on Steam that have launched for sale and been barely a game or been broken, and that compounded with a lot of big budget games, the Assassin's Creeds of the world, and that sort of thing, launching busted. Even games like The Witcher that are not have huge problems, there have been 4 patches for that thing already.
Right.
So I just, as part of that, I was like, what's it going to take for people to stop shipping kind of broken ass video games?
Yeah.
And their response I think was valid because it was very much focused on their kind of form of early access where they're requiring everyone to have a demo. so for free, so you can try it out before you buy it. And they're curating it. They're not just letting anyone launch on that thing. So they're trying to address that end of things. But I still think, the larger question, the larger problem is these $60 games used to launch in a state that they were perfectly playable, and that doesn't happen as often anymore. And it's really wild.
Well, it's also really interesting because people are buying the crap out of these early access games.
Yeah.
And with DayZ and those sorts of games they're not finished, they're not even close to finished.
Right.
But people love them and they're buying them.
People are absolutely complicit in the early access model. It wouldn't exist if it wasn't a valid business.
Right.
Model.
I think there are people that want to be, and I think that was Microsoft's response as well. It's like there are people that want to be closer to game development and feel like they kind of are playing a role from the outside looking in. And I think the games that do early access right, like look at something like Nuclear Throne, where every week they're just updating like that. The game's crazy. It's already super fun. There's a lot to it, and it's always getting updated. Like I think there are ways to do that sort of like early access properly, but there are other people out there that are launching things that are barely games. And
everybody is swinging for that Minecraft thing.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? That's what they're all trying to do. I had a really interesting thing that happened on Monday. I couldn't attend the Microsoft press event because I had to go to it was on the film side of my career. There was a meeting, a conference of studio heads and festival people, people who run like film festivals, and it was crowdfunding. And so they wanted me to come talk because we had a successful crowdfunding campaign for a movie last summer.
Right.
And they were debating whether or not crowdfunding is ethical for raising money for films. And they were talking about it, there's pros and cons. And I said, you guys are having this conversation about this. And right down the road at E3, they put up a major AAA title, and it was available for pre-order that's in development. That's a form of crowdfunding in a way. They have early access, and they have traditional crowdfunding we saw with Shenmue. It's like the video game industry is not having that debate.
A ton of money.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's being fully funded.
And now it seems to be a very poorly disguised Sony project.
Yeah.
That they were gauging interest for monetarily.
And if you talk to Sony about it, which I did earlier today, kind of just like, hey, what's going on with this thing? They kind of use that to gauge interest. I think like Shenmue's a case where like there have been people that have been very rabid about it, but you don't know if that's 9 people that are crazy or 10,000 people that are only slightly whacked out. And so the thing they found out is like, yeah, there are enough people to make this thing a reality. And now I think Sony probably feels a little more comfortable saying like, okay, now we'll put some of our money in to actually make this a reality, because no one's making a game for $2 million, especially not a Shenmue sequel.
That was kind of one of the things I wondered when they started teasing, even before they launched the crowdfunding for Yooka-Laylee.
Yeah.
As I was wondering, I was like, people say they love, Banjo-Kazooie. It has a very fond place in people's hearts. Does it have a place in people's hearts that they're enough that they're willing to actually put down their own money for it? Turns out the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they absolutely do. But it's one of those things that it almost seems like, oh, people are interested.
Right. And I think there's something that's kind of perfect to that, because, there have been years where, like genres that fall out of favor, you get people go like, man, I would pay $200 for a classic adventure game from Tim Schafer at this point. And then finally someone built the framework for Tim Schafer to go, okay, yeah, cool, let's do it. And I think that on some level that's great. It's also just one of those things that if it gets used incorrectly, it can be just as scary as bad early access, if not scarier.
The video game industry and the film industry both get criticized for making sequels and reboots. But the audience overwhelmingly at the box office and at the cash register supports sequels and reboots. And now the choice of what do they want to fund, they fund sequels and reboots.
Yeah, it's guys that have been separated from the properties that they made famous, getting out there on their own and going like, well, I can't tell you I'm making a Castlevania game, but
like Shroud of the Avatar from Richard Garriott.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean Shroud of the Avatar. What's this game gonna be like? Richard's like, well, I've been to space, so I don't have to answer you at all. And yeah, like I think that stuff's really cool because gaming has, been around since, I guess, the mid-'70s, late '70s.
Yeah.
Like, there are people that have grown up with gaming that now have deep, deep, deep nostalgia for the very beginnings of it, the middle period. Like we have eras now.
Well, we've seen that with Star Citizen. I mean, Star Citizen's the perfect example of nostalgia, putting your money where your mouth is. Now they've made $80 million, I want to say.
That thing just scary. I'm afraid to play that game
So
because
am I.
it's just like, I'm not sure that it's... Yeah, and
I'm
this money isn't gonna-
developers.
Yeah, it's really crazy. But like Chris Roberts is on. I mean, it's Wing Commander
Wing Commander,
there, and you're like, well, okay, I would like to play a new Wing Commander game, especially one that is the dream Wing Commander game I always had in my mind. But I'm not going to pay them like 20 grand or whatever for a ship like some people are. Like, that's nuts. That's nuts.
That being said,
Our Gus paid $300.
Oh yeah.
No, I think with tax and everything, it ended up $350.
Huh.
He paid for the game that's not out. I think he got the dogfighting module, or he got to walk around it or something.
There's like a hangar, and then you can dogfight with some of the things, but not all of it. Yeah, it's interesting.
And yet he still is very happy about it.
Well, we're sort of in a golden age right now where a bunch of people are putting their money up, and we're getting to see these products, like Shenmue or Star Citizen, those sorts of things, but we haven't yet seen the problem. We haven't yet seen people come by and be like, I want all my money back right now. We see it occasionally, but not very often.
Right. I think what the FTC got involved with something that didn't ship on Kickstarter relatively recently, you start to wonder, what's the regulation going to look like when people don't fulfill, kind of those promises? Like, where's the legal line for that stuff? And yeah, I think that's the. I'll feel better when that stuff is a little more established, where it's like, okay, now there's consequences. They can't easily run off with the money.
Exactly.
There's a very interesting thing that's coming on June 19th, very soon, like in a couple days. And it's a way of interpreting Reg A, which sounds like Reg A, but it's Regulation A. And it allows for equity crowdfunding, where people who crowdfunding are allowed to have equity in whatever the project is. That might significantly change the way crowdfunding is done.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, but I think the people that are using crowdfunding right now are not looking to give up any equity in their thing. So
I think you're right.
I think they'd only use that if they had to.
But if people start to do it, the expectation might shift that the backers might become more sophisticated in their choices. I'm just like, hey, that's cool. I'll back that. That's the way I do it. But if there's an equity option there, they might start to expect that. Or there might be tears.
Or they might look at it and go like, well, if I have equity in this, I want to fund something that I think will be successful from a business standpoint.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, maybe you're not funding as many weird spiritual successors to old games.
I think people, from my perspective, people seem to expect not actual equity and profits or anything like that, but once they fund a game, they expect to be involved, to have their feedback, to have their voice heard, and to be part of that process, because they're an investor now. They're not thinking about it like, I'm going to make more money out of this, but they're thinking, I want to be part of making this so that it's what I wanted.
Right, and that's, I think, that's an unfair expectation. Is don't have power. Even if they're acting that way, really they're doing is kind of pre-ordering a thing or putting money into a thing that they hope happens, and that's the extent of the relationship. And I think some developers maybe need to kind of put their foot down a little bit and go no, you don't get to tell me how to design the game. The whole thing is, if you didn't trust me to design this game, you probably shouldn't have backed it in the first place.
Right.
Well, Adam Kovic always says they're paying for dreams rather than reality.
Yeah.
Which is we're basically paying for a game that we hope Star Citizen is. And they're getting there. I've seen the modules come out and it looks amazing, but is it going to live up to exactly what I dreamed? The project will live up to exactly what it is. And we're seeing those consequences now.
And you see games that that end their Kickstarter successfully, and then there's a huge long time before they ship, and then you see this crowd of people that feel attached to it. Yeah. They turn on it, they get excited again, they turn on it again. There's a negative sentiment around something like Mighty Number 9, which everyone was very excited about right out of the gate. And
there is?
Then you get the impression there are some people that are they put out something that was playable, and people were like, oh no, this isn't.
Yeah, right.
This isn't Mega Man enough.
Yeah. Or it's oh, it's not finished.
Yeah.
It's how can you match everyone's expectations based on their nostalgia? You probably can't.
Yeah.
My favorite was Broken Age, watching the audience go through the dilemma where, say, Tim Schafer was developing the game in conjunction with EA. And Tim Schafer went public and said, I just need another $2 million to make the game. Everyone would be like, EA, give him $2 million. He's trying to make a good game. Meanwhile, when they ran out of money after the Broken Age Kickstarter, and there was the rumor they were going to do a second Kickstarter, the audience reaction was, hey, you had a budget. And you said, and they were watching the audience turn into distributors and producers was so funny to me.
They were like, it's not our fault you overscoped your game. Rein it in. Come on. Cut some features. Let's get it done. Yeah. It's crazy.
And that happened over a 18-month period. It was really funny to watch that. And Double Fine very intelligently did not do that second crowdfunding campaign. They just found a way to make the game.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great game.
They crowdfunded some other stuff and kind of got some other projects going, and yeah. Totally.
Well, all right, we've been talking about crowdfunding a while. Let's talk about E3. So This is your 21st E3.
Yeah.
What have you seen? That's always the question.
Well, here's a good question actually from Twitter. Is Ian MKLV asks, Jeff, out of all the E3s you've attended, what was the biggest mic drop moment of all time?
Wow.
I think it was Sony with the PS4 stuff. When they got out there and had their little video of passing games one to the other.
The renting or the borrowing.
Like, that is a real legendary kind of face slap crazy moment of just like Microsoft got out there and said, "Here's everything we're doing," and then all Sony had to do was go, "We're not doing that," and then drop it, and that was huge. I mean, you have your kind of early moments of like the Saturn price getting announced and then Sony just getting up on stage and going like, yeah, we're way cheaper than that later.
I remember that.
That was a really good one early on, and the rest of it all kind of blurs together at some point. It's I mean when they announced the price of the PlayStation 3 was kind of the negative end of that thing when they're like, hey, it's $599, and you're like, oh, I knew it was going to be expensive, but that's crazy.
What about you guys? What about memories from E3 from what you followed? A big mic drop
Biggest
moments?
mic drop.
The one I remember was when Bungie put up a countdown when they were going to release or announce ODST. They put a countdown. I'm a huge Bungie fan, so I was tuned into this. They put a countdown that was leading up to the Microsoft press conference. But the Sony press conference, I guess, was a little lackluster, so Microsoft didn't feel like they needed to talk about ODST.
Yeah.
So the countdown ended, and they were like, Yeah, Microsoft. It was like a harbinger of what was to come. Suddenly we all had a clue as to what that relationship was like.
Yeah, and you could see there was just like some of that tension got out there in a way that was just like, oh, you knew like, oh, Bungie is not happy at all.
No, yeah.
About this, like, yeah.
I'm a big fan of any time they say, here's a thing that you didn't know existed. By the way, it's in stores today.
Yeah.
I love that every single time.
That was Todd Howard this year.
Yes.
I mean, I honestly could not believe he came out with the mobile game, the collector's edition, and the game that the entire internet wanted. And he's like, oh, by the way, it's playable in like a couple of months.
Right.
It's ready to go.
Yeah, that was a really great one. I think that's something that like everyone should have had this year, like reading the trends and be like, oh, we need to have something available right now for people. And it was a good start where, the preview program for Xbox One, they launched their kind of backwards compatibility stuff. And Nintendo had a couple of things out. That Earthbound Beginnings old game finally released for the first time in English. Like that. You can do this right now is really amazing.
Yeah,
everyone should do that.
It's a lesson to be learned. If you look at the Shenmue crowdfunding campaign and you look at the release of Fallout Shelter, everyone gets on this super hype mode, and we all kind of buy into it as a culture. Giving that audience a way to channel that energy into something real, that's obviously very effective.
A proper call to action, some places to spend a little bit of money. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's like devious in some ways, but absolutely.
I don't think pre-orders are that anymore. Before you can pre-order a game and you're excited, now we're all past that.
Digital games, like, the concept of pre-ordering a digital thing is nuts. Except for preloading, right? I mean, it's just, you don't need to do that.
And most audiences are, I think, a little more educated now. They're waiting for reviews, they're waiting for previews of these games before they pre-order anything.
Yeah.
Whereas, 10 years ago, if we heard about a game, we're like, oh, cool, I'll pre-order that. But you never heard a thing about it because it was in a magazine.
Totally. I think, there's a huge segment of the audience that, that doesn't actually get anything from reviews anymore. They kind of know what their tastes are. You can see enough of a game, especially, it's like the big budget games are, a little safer, a little safer, a little safer. You can look at that and go, yes. You can look at another one and go, no. I think the savvier ends of the audience are kind of moving on from some of that style of coverage completely.
Absolutely.
Do you think the audience has changed much over your career? I mean, last year we had Gamergate. I feel like I'm saying the name of the beast here. But, has the audience as a whole changed, do you think?
I mean, some things are always the same. You're always going to say something about a game that someone's not going to like, and
therefore you don't know anything.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I got death threats for reviews of Dreamcast games.
Right.
Like it's if someone sent me my home address and said like, we're coming for you because you didn't like Virtua Fighter 3 TB, and I'm like, it's a bad port of the game.
And listen, Jeff, I want to apologize for that. I was very young at the time. And I was really upset. I really like Virtua Fighter 3.
We all fly off the handle sometimes.
It happens.
It's okay. But I think the change has been, like our podcast, the Giant Bombcast, is basically like it's the biggest thing we do. And like I said, I came into this primarily as a reviewer. So like reviewers back then, at GameSpot anyway, like we were in the hole. Like we didn't come up for air. We didn't talk to game developers. Like we were in here reviewing final products, constantly and didn't really interact with the industry at large. And then when I got out of there and started my own thing, it's you get to see like that larger industry, and I think there's a lot of different stuff going on out there that's way more interesting than saying like, hey, the frame rate's a little less than stable. Like I could say that on a podcast and move on. It doesn't need to be this huge dissertation like it used to be.
Right. And listen, not to kiss your ass too much, but I think a lot of people should realize kind of a debt of gratitude that they owe you for the way that you left GameSpot. You were very, very well established there. There was a huge controversy. It was a very famous departure. You went off and started your own thing. You were successful. I think paved the way for a lot of guys like what the Kind of Funny guys are doing now, what you guys did, going as a group, leaving Machinima. And you were a pioneer in that.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't setting out to pioneer much. It was, in a lot of ways, it was like, okay, well, I've had that job for 11 years. I've had that job since I was 21. Now what? Like, okay, then it was that moment of like, well, I could go be a producer somewhere and work on a game, but like that just sounded like a dead end. And once the kind of controversy kind of whipped up around what happened, it became pretty clear. Like, okay, I'm going to be able to figure out a way to start something out of this and do something out of that. And ended up kind of teaming up with some guys that we had worked with at GameSpot years ago, and like we all had this kind of shared vision of like they were already doing wiki stuff and cool stuff there. It was like, totally, let's do video game wiki, right? Let's do this crazy thing, and then we'll figure out basically I just said I want to do the fun parts of my job and not the bad parts of the job, and let's try to build a business around it. And we did. So
let's try to make our jobs a little bit less like work all the time, right?
Yeah.
And do the stuff we enjoy.
And then, getting back to the idea of like, I want to put out stuff that I would want to watch,
Wow, that's what we say every day at the company.
It's the whole thing of just like, if you're not like, if you're just like, well, I'm just cranking this stuff out and who cares, that shows. And,
right.
It was something that, the latter days, that 11 years, like it wasn't the same anymore. And so being able to kind of start fresh and wipe the slate clean and figure it out all over again was fun.
And the gaming audience, the culture as a whole, it seems like has an incredible ability. Sometimes it goes overboard, but incredible ability to sniff out something that's not genuine when something is servicing the gaming industry versus actually being an organic part of it. And the rejection level for stuff that people see as not genuine, I think it's bigger in gaming than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people can detect that stuff from a mile away, right? There's you can't fool people the same way anymore, and that's a good thing. I think that hurts bad games too. You can't market your way into sales of a bad game anymore because word of mouth and all this other stuff just kills it dead. Yeah. And it wasn't always that way. You could have these companies would have ad campaigns, do all this other stuff, and figure out ways to get bad products into people's hands. And it's a lot harder to do that, and that's great. It's a lot harder on our end of things too. Like you said, there's a zillion different things out there. If you're making stuff that's terrible, or if you're making stuff that is kind of not serving the audience, I think people will eventually figure that out.
Yeah, I think that's an upside to the DLC environment that we're in now. I mean, we always talk about the downside of like day one patches,
sure,
and all incomplete games and things like that. But if a big part of the revenue model for video games is that extended long tail where people continue to buy, then it means there's more of a pressure on them to make that initial floor of $60 worth more to where you want to continue that.
Yeah.
It's almost like as games have not escalated in price and that's kind of gone into the DLC world, that the $60 almost becomes like a trial for a $100 game or a $120 game.
Right. It's kind of like season passes and stuff like that, right? And that stuff can be a little weird sometimes. I think some companies do season passes better than others when it comes to like letting hey, here's what you're going to get, instead of just like, buy something, you'll get 4 things over the next year. What are those things?
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
It's a map. I don't know.
It's funny because they know how many there's going to be, but they don't know what they are.
Exactly. Yeah. They've spec'd it out. They know what the first 2 are, but the second 2 are like, we'll see how these first 2 do, and
Right.
Well, it forces those large companies to stay honest, because if they do it once and it doesn't work, then the audience will remember. The gaming community always remembers, and they don't want to get burned again, so they won't do that.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about that is the exact opposite is early access, because I feel like people are getting burned, and they're still like, it's okay, it's no big deal, let's buy another one.
Right.
That I can't figure out.
Yeah, I think, you have some people that just want to be closer to some development and try to have a say in some of that stuff, or they believe in a particular developer. I think we're starting to see more and more of that. It's one of the other things that is kind of knocking down some of the kind of traditional game journalism stuff, is like more and more developers and more publishers especially are just cutting out the middleman. Like, they don't need me to put out a trailer. Right. It used to be that a site would be fighting for, like, we want the exclusive to debut your trailer on our site, and that will bring everyone to our site, and it'll be great.
No, now it's the official YouTube channel.
Exactly. Now, I get trailers from publishers, and they specifically say, don't publish this to YouTube, because we're putting it on our YouTube channel. Yeah. We want to get subscribers. Yeah. Like, follow, and subscribe. Please embed our trailer. Don't post your own. And I'm just like, well, we're not going to do that. Yeah. And so you see more and more companies interviewing themselves. They are putting up their own trailers, all that sort of stuff, kind of cutting out the press. And like, for my part, I think there's some businesses that are built around being part of that cycle, and for them it's probably really scary. But like, we kind of are to remove ourselves from as much of that as possible. Part of that was because we were small, starting out, launching Giant Bomb, but also, like, I just want to talk about that stuff, and I think there's always going to be room for some kind of independent voice around that stuff to kind of keep an eye on it and tell people about it and that sort of stuff, and not have to be in the, like, well, we want to bring you exclusive information, so you view it here first, the world exclusive of this trailer, this and that. I think that model's just not viable these days, or as viable.
Yeah, it can be tough. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the difference between, like, games journalism and enthusiast press, because a lot of games journalism, a lot of it runs through marketing and PR departments. A lot of that information, that's your source, essentially.
Right. It's, well, like, journalism's really specific and really weird word. There's a lot of different ways it gets performed. I these days, like, I'm not out there pounding the beat. I'm not, like, wearing my press card and my hat and shaking down a source or anything quite like that.
Talking Tim Schafer.
Yeah, but, like, I still think that there's an ethical standard to live up to along the way that is it comes from the world of journalism and that sort of thing, like kind of how you carry yourself and that sort of thing, and trying to live up to that standard, I think, is the important part. And yeah, you do get a lot of things directly from a relationship with a publisher. Like, we get a lot of games from public relations people, but then there are a lot of, like, people out there, streamers and that sort of thing, that are getting it from the marketing end. Yep. Which ends up being this weird thing of, like, okay, now you're part of a marketing deal, you're signing some kind of contract, you might not be able to say anything bad about the game while you're streaming it in order to get it early. Like that, like, I see those sorts of relationships, and that gets really scary for me. Yeah. Because those are the ones that, when we talk about, like, people needing to sniff some things out, like, sometimes the disclosures, and that could be a little worrisome.
Has there ever, I don't know of it, but has there been anything in the history of E3 where this is an industry event, you have to get a pass to come in here, where people have been banned from E3 and not allowed to come because they were too negative?
Like blacklisted from E3?
Yeah, essentially.
No, the publishers don't really have that kind of sway over who gets a badge. If someone were to get kicked out of E3 for stealing stuff or vandalizing things, then I think the ESA at some point would be like, yeah, you don't get to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of, like, kind of keeping people out for just their general opinion, no, I don't.
The publishers can blacklist you, though. I mean, that happened with Apple and Gizmodo. Sure. When Gizmodo published the iPhone before they actually released it.
The one they found in the bar.
Exactly. Apple blacklisted Gizmodo.
Certainly. But, like no one publisher runs E3. You might have a case where, like, one outlet can't go to Bethesda because they've leaked a bunch of their games, for example, and thus they don't get invited to anything that Bethesda does ever again. And, that sort of stuff does happen, but it's perfectly within the right of that publisher to say, well, we don't want to work with this outlet because we don't like them. Like, if every publisher woke up tomorrow and said, we're going to stop sending Giant Bomb games, then I would have to make sure that we have a budget to acquire that stuff on our own. And go that route with it. And that's kind of always how I've viewed it, is to make sure that, like, hey, we can pull that ripcord if it gets there, but it hasn't gotten there. It's relatively cordial.
Basically, Bruce, you're very happy that Silent Hills doesn't have a booth. Otherwise, those would be uncomfortable for you.
Well, I mean, it might be a little uncomfortable, but at the same time, like you just said, it's sort of like we feel like we have a responsibility to the audience to give them this information. That if we have it, and it's something then I like you said, hold ourselves to a certain standard, but also a responsibility of the audience to give them that.
Right. I think the responsible ways to deal with that information, and like, okay, well, and when it gets into like checking a source, believing a source, having a second source, like that sort of stuff. I mean, that is just straight up tried and true journalism at that point.
Right.
If you're kind of going down that path and verifying that stuff to that extent, for sure.
So what are you excited about at E3? What have you seen that you're...
for me, it's kind of the technology stuff at this point. HoloLens is really cool.
Is it going to take hold, finally, in this generation, VR and AR?
They're going to put so much money into it that it'll work whether we want it to or not.
Right.
And luckily, it seems like it's actually pretty rad. I was actually really surprised by HoloLens. I think what they have right now isn't quite there yet, but it works. My only complaint is like when you put it on, the only part that you can see, kind of the augmented reality, is kind of a smallish window in the center of it. It's not full peripheral. But
does it work more than Kinect?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's kind of what people have been worried about, right? That this looks really, really cool, but when they announced Kinect, that also looked like you could scan a skateboard into a game.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, where's the line there between the vision of what it could be and what it actually is?
And the demo I saw was not attached to an actual video game. Right. It was like a little. It's a Halo-themed experience that they. Like, you put this thing on, they measure the distance between your eyes, because that's where they are with the prototypes right now, I guess. And then they're like, okay, turn to the left and follow the waypoint. And you turn, and there's just a Halo waypoint down the hall. And you're like, oh, okay.
Wow.
You walk down there, and it tells you what to do next. It knows that you got there. It says, okay, hang a left. And then it paints a little fake window over this wall, and it opens up, and you're looking at a hangar, and there's a bunch of ships out there, and you're like, that's all right. Gives you another waypoint, and then it's like a little briefing pops up out of the table. And they got little dots on the table. You can kind of see some of like how they're probably doing the magic right now.
Sure.
But other than it kind of just popping occasionally, like 2 or 3 times over the course of the demo, it was stable, it looked really nice, and it was impressive. Like, I don't know what that thing is as a consumer device. I don't know how they integrated it into actual video games.
It's magic.
But that thing's cool. And then, I ended up in the same demo room for Project Morpheus that Kanye was in today.
Nice.
So he seemed to be having a good time with the heist of that getaway demo.
What did you say? Did he smile?
Did he smile? Yeah.
I believe, he was kind of cackling a little bit, sitting behind the wheel of the car, shooting an Uzi, 2 move controllers. That I played that demo not long after he did. It's cool stuff. They have there's a game called Verzoom, VR Zoom, where you're riding a stationary bike and you're a horse.
What?
All right.
I like it.
The faster you ride the bike, you eventually kind of fly. So you're like this flying horse.
Naturally.
You land, you steer. Like, of course.
Of course you are. You're a horse. A horse.
As one does.
Of course.
Yeah.
I find it interesting. One of the first E3s that I went to, I started coming in the early 2000s, and I remember down in Kensha Hall when that still existed, where it smelled like dreams slowly dying. They actually had a lot of VR. There was some new VR thing every year, and nothing panned out. Nothing ever eventuated. And all of a sudden, as of I guess the whole Oculus thing, suddenly VR is a legit thing.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that like it's been trying and stumbling and falling for years and years and years, and then something happens, and you're not even sure what that thing is, because this kid starting Oculus at the time, he was just a kid who wanted, and there was no reason to believe that it would be any different than what came before, and yet.
Yeah,
Suddenly there was that shift.
Technology had finally gotten to the point where the big problems that prevented VR from like making people sick are finally able to be addressed,
Well, if you think about it, motion gaming, like the Wii, was an enormously popular console.
Yeah.
That really is VR just without the headset.
Sure.
So you're operating in a space and even like you look at that PlayStation Move controller, that looks like an old school VR controller. Yeah. You expect the dude with the gigantic goggles,
shooting pterodactyls.
Yeah, in the polygon environment.
Right, yeah.
The PS Move controller looks like a lot of things, and
it does.
Most of them are not controllers.
I gripped 2 of them at the same time today.
Did you really?
Just like Kanye.
It was magical.
Yeah.
It's like a throwback to the old days of E3 and CES.
Right. No, yeah. Oh, Las Vegas, such a filthy city.
But I'm excited about it. One of the things I'm worried about too is that it's a weird thing to be worried about, but I'm worried that VR will become so ubiquitous and so well over some other technologies like Microsoft Room, which is a technology that extends the TV beyond the television set and like puts the environments on the walls around it. There's prototypes you can look up online. I want to see that, and I want to play a game like that.
Yeah, I think, there are a lot of different directions for a lot of these kind of alternative inputs, and just like there's a lot of different ways that stuff can go. And I think we're at a time now where you're going to see a lot of people experimenting, and like gaming will always have its place in that, but we're going to see more and more, like architecture or just like relaxation tools of like, I'm going to go zen out in my headset for a while.
Yeah.
I already decided to put fake windows into space in my VR house.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're you could be in your filthy apartment and put on a headset and be somewhere clean. And then, of course, I mean,
That's really depressing to think about. Like, oh, this mess.
The more depressing part is that eventually it all wraps back around and you get to VR porn.
Yeah.
Well, that's already happening.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, that's happened a long time ago, Jeff.
Yeah.
I don't know if you realize that.
I haven't been on the forefront of virtual reality pornography.
I'm not sure if I believe that or not. I thought you were on the forefront of that.
It's, I just don't have the right equipment. I only have an Oculus DK1, and it's just not real enough for me, Yeah, so, it'll go a lot of crazy ways over the next few years as everyone kind of figures it out, and it just makes it a time to be following this stuff.
Yeah, that takes your discussion of virtual reality porn takes the uncanny valley to like a totally, entirely.
Beyond that, do we get to a point where, in the same way that the porn industry drove the adoption and the success of like the various formats, is porn going to decide which VR headset comes out on top, so to speak?
Like who has the most lockdown storefront? Like Oculus is going to build their store. Sony's never going to allow that on the PS4. Nope. What does Valve feel about that stuff? And, then all the other Star VR. We're getting to a point where there's going to be like every single company is going to have their own weird headset and their own weird rules if we're not careful.
Yeah, I mean the porn industry has. We're off on a really weird tangent here.
Hey, this is related to gaming and old CES.
It has shaped those format battles before with VHS and beta. The rental industry was huge in that, and the first initial rental industry was pornography.
Yeah.
Not speaking from experience, but just reading Wikipedia the way I do.
Well, right now there's a lot of porn on Oculus, and it seems to be It seems to be the easiest, I guess, the easiest development platform for pornography. I haven't seen anything. Like you said, I don't know if Valve is going to allow that on the Vive.
Right. I think that's the thing that closes the gap, right? Because anyone can put that stuff out for free, but like, how do you lock it down and sell it?
Are you laughing at the gap?
Yeah, I'm good.
Like, how do you actually sell it and make money off of it? Like, is someone gonna have to come up with like, we've made a VR storefront for just porn? What do they have to do there if all the other likely candidates decide to shut that stuff out?
I wonder if will Facebook allow that? I don't know.
Sure. Right. They probably never would.
I don't know.
But it's an open platform, and on some level, like the APIs are out there. You can make that stuff and do what you want, but then again, how do you sell that software to people and keep it, prevent people from pirating it?
You jailbreak your Oculus is basically what you do.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see when that thing comes retail, what it's going to look like. How will it be locked down? But there's a big push in the linear industry, like movies and TV, for virtual reality or 360 content as well.
We saw some of that at South by Southwest.
Yeah, it's getting to be huge, and I think the pressure there is that with the prevalence of like home theater 4K TVs and everything like that, there has to be something to differentiate the first party experience.
Right.
That's why 3D I think is so prevalent right now in theaters, because they're trying to preserve that experience as long as they can before people just abandon it entirely.
You have to keep people coming into theaters, D-box seats, not bringing them in the way it used to.
You like D-box?
Yeah, I love D-box. It's so
Have
cool.
you tried it yet?
I haven't tried it. I hear it's amazing.
That's what it shakes?
Yeah, it's the one that shakes and you can turn up or down.
Do they spray water in your face too?
No, you bring your own water.
That's like Captain EO. I love it.
I'm still waiting for ones where it like makes you smell everything. I can see that might not be the most popular one.
I've seen demos at like GDC where it's like, we got it figured out, and you smell. It's like all this smells like bad chemicals and poop. Like, what are you doing?
It's like oh, dirty alley, fantastic.
Yeah.
There was a way back. There was on the cover of Wired was a product, I believe it was called the E-Scent. It was back when E instead of I, and was the big vowel in front of tech. And I think it was the E-Scent, and it just it was going to revolutionize the olfactory experience, and it just never happened. Like, I never heard about it again.
It's gross.
I'm always curious about what happened.
I mean, it probably smelled terrible.
Yeah,
Like,
and
probably what
it
happened.
probably was just way too expensive. You have to buy refill cartridges
Right.
for whatever the smells are. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some cool stuff with smell. Like there was a ride. It was in what's the park next to Disneyland, the California
Adventure.
whatever.
Oh,
and they
yeah.
had one that was called like Flying Over California, where all you do is they lift a seat up into a half-dome screen, and then they project like you're flying over orange fields and all that stuff. But they had smell as part of that, so
Oh.
they had the smell of orange groves, and that was really cool. And then you smelled traffic and went, nah, I'm done.
Yeah.
A little less cool.
Yeah. I don't want to smell traffic. That's real life. I get that all the time.
And again, when you get back into pornography, that becomes a much darker experience.
All things lead back to pornography at
not
some point in time. Well, I not to go too far back in our conversation, but I'd be curious to hear from everybody, like with the Shenmue success, what's a game from your past that you'd love to see come back and be either rebooted by a studio or to be, funded through crowdfunding?
Gosh, it's hard. I'm a big Smash TV fan. I just got a
it's
cabinet
great.
in my house a little while ago, and I think that it's weird because so many people have made dual joystick shooters now that it's not maybe as exciting as maybe it used to be conceptually, but I think that it would be cool to see a sequel to that.
Yeah, it's such an insanely difficult game too.
Yeah.
And I remember that in the arcade. I would love to see a sequel to Star Control 2.
Yeah.
That's such a great
Totally.
game. Beloved game by people that played it. And they didn't make a Star Control 3, but it was,
not-
that's
it's
why
not
they
what you're
didn't make a
looking for.
Star Control 4. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So I'd love to see that, man. If they crowdfund that, I know Gus and I would both go nuts for that.
I'm gonna channel my inner James Willems and say Psychonauts.
Oh, wow. Okay. Where is he?
would-
He's cheering. He's cheering. He
I
wants.
would love to see Psychonauts. It's not likely, but if I could crowdfund it, I would.
I bet that'll happen.
I think it's on the way.
I'm good. Like, take my money.
I'm going to be really contrary and say I don't want to see any old game rebooted. I really? Honestly, it's like music. I like
You're biased.
I like watching music develop and evolve, and I like watching video games develop and evolve
Sure.
Into something brand new. And to me, every year is just so new and different. And like with all the motion controls and VR and stuff like that, I'm just really excited to see what's coming. That said, I do want to see Half-Life 3.
Okay.
But that's not really a reboot. It's just sort of a sequel. I want to see the story carried on. But in terms of
Are you revealing exclusively that Half-Life 3 is not a reboot of Half-Life 1?
no, Jeff, I'm not doing that.
Okay, all right.
No, yeah, I just don't want to see. I don't want to see any reboots. Like Shenmue didn't get me excited. Final Fantasy VII didn't get me excited. None of
Yeah.
that stuff got me excited.
Same here.
I just want to see new games. I want to see some platforms evolve. That's what I want to see.
You know what I do like about reboots of stuff that's like a lot older games is I like seeing what new technology has enabled those games to be.
Yes, I
Taking
agree.
a super, a really simple concept, the Monkey Island games that came out several years ago, the remasters. I liked the old Monkey Island games, thought they were great, saw the new ones and went, yeah, these look, even better. The art's, prettier, all great. The fact that it had the button to see the old version and go, ah.
Yeah.
But I loved what it had become, and it was a way for a lot more new people who would never go back and find that Monkey Island game to experience it and have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, game preservation is like an interesting topic these days. It's something that games are now old enough that you have a crowd of people that are concerned about losing them for all time. Like these MMOs that get shut down because it doesn't make business sense to keep them running and stuff like that.
Right.
Like trying to keep all that stuff up and running. Like it's fascinating that we've gotten to this point.
And somebody has to make that effort to preserve it. It's not just going to happen on its own. I always think of the internet as like a self-archiving entity, but it's not the case. Things disappear and they go away. And it's like, unless you think a digital entity, it's like once it's on the internet, it's there for good. But if GeoCities gets turned off or something like that, we lose things.
Right.
Yeah. And
There's always a reason why that stuff disappears, and it's because nobody wants it. I mean, that's usually what it ends up being.
It's business
wants it.
reasons.
Nobody
It's like
wants
a
it.
business is just like, we could preserve all this stuff. We'll throw it on a Blu-ray disc or something, but we're not going to keep it out there because who cares?
Yeah.
There's stuff that I wrote a long time ago that you can't really find anymore. Videos that I did, it's just like that stuff's just gone.
Yep.
Or there's just a codec change and you can't watch that video anymore on any computer.
Right, yeah. It's like, okay, well, I guess I could dig up a real player codec for the modern, for VLC, but no.
All right, well, it's time to wrap up the patch, but it looks like we're about to be joined by the rest of everybody in the world. To
I just
wrap
want to Jeff,
up
after
the
all these
day.
years, it was really great to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Really
Yeah.
great.
Thanks,
Yeah.
I'll see
Thanks
you.
so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Are you leaving, Jeff?
Am I
You
leaving?
can stay.
Okay, I'll
Let's
go
do
right.
that.
Okay, I'll hang out.
Talk
Yeah.
about all the
stay
cool
for the
stuff we
sign-off.
saw today. We're going to talk about some of the stuff we're going to see tomorrow. So today, hold on, I have spreadsheets here. They're very impressive.
While we're waiting,
professional.
While we're waiting, Jeff, I want to find out what other incendiary questions you're going to ask tomorrow on Giant Bomb.
Tonight we're on starting at 7:30, and then we'll be on tomorrow again at 7:30. And you know, like I kind of want to, you know, we're going to have some folks from Sony on. I kind of want to
Hit 'em hard.
what they have to say about similar topics.
All right,
So
good,
We'll
good.
see, we'll see how it goes.
And you guys are also doing a lot of content on YouTube's E3 Hub, right?
We are,
your
yes.
Content is appearing on youtube.com/E3, which is where the
Yes.
stream also is. So you can find all the E3 content in one place and check out all of Giant Bomb stuff.
We'll be there.
Yes. So we had a big day today. We saw Tomb Raider. We saw
Guitar Hero.
We saw
Gears of War.
Gears. We
Assassin's
saw,
Creed.
Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
We saw Battlefront.
Saw Halo. Did we list these? We saw Mirror's Edge.
Mirror's Edge.
And then we had special guests. We had Hike the Gamer and Typical Gamer on. We had Game Grumps. Who else did we have?
The
We had the
Creatures.
Creatures.
Creatures came on, and then
Yep.
we met our
We had Andrew from, what was that? Was that
The Wind Walker.
Sega? No.
It's Mega 64.
Oh, and,
Mega
yes,
64.
we had Andrew, not from Mega 64.
I heard good things about his Andrew's appearance.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, he's very passionate about the translation of obscure Japanese games, and on Operation Wind Talker or Wind Passer or something like that. I'm pretty
Very
sure. it's called.
noble effort to bring untranslated JPRGs to America.
Right.
You
Yeah.
like JRPGs, Jeff?
Not anymore.
Okay,
I
that's
had
good.
my time as a child when I had that kind of free time, and I can't do that anymore.
I understand.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we also had a special appearance by a smaller YouTube channel. It was XBL Caboose. If you guys have a YouTube channel and you're here at E3, come by. We want to talk to you. We want to promote your channel, please. And Songhammer as well, a late addition to the day two craziness.
Levar Burton came by for a while too, right?
Yeah, he was earlier on the podcast. He
That's
came by.
awesome.
And his daughter.
And his daughter Mika, that's true.
Yep,
Dropped
and
it twice.
we've got another big day coming up tomorrow. We've got we're going to be having Need for Speed on. We're going to have the Division. We're going to have the guys from Kind of Funny are going to come on. They're going to play some Super Smash Brothers. We're going to be seeing For Honor, the new IP from Ubisoft, the
cool,
4v4
cool.
That game is fun.
which
God,
I maintain
really
I'm not
excited about that
terrible
one.
at, or the other team cheats,
Will be
something
awesome.
like that. We're also going to be seeing more of the new Ghost Recon and Rainbow Six Siege. We'll be looking at Rock Band 4. We will have live gameplay of Destiny, and by the way, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, we're going to get that all set up here?
Yeah, I don't know how much I can share. I don't know how much they want to save for the reveal, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
It is no small feat to get developers to take their games out of their booths and bring them here. It is.
Yeah, no, I have booked a stage show before. It is not fun.
Yeah.
And this has been a great day. I mean, this has been a really fun experience for us. This is the first time we've ever done like a live show like this. We're doing 3 days in a row, 6 to 8 hours a day. Today was an absolutely fantastic day. I can't thank everybody enough who came by, said hello, and the wonderful crew that we have working for us as well. Thank you guys so much.
Thank
All
you.
right. So we will see you guys tomorrow. Oh, one last thing. We're going to have special guest Rocket jump on as well.
Ah, great. And we're also doing a fan meetup at 7:30 if you're in the LA area.
That's Pacific time. We'll trust you to do your own time translation.
Yeah. And if
Over
you're
at the
everywhere
Hyatt.
else in the world, sorry, I just made you very angry about telling you something that was local.
All right. We'll call it a day, guys.
Let's call it a day.
All
Let's do
right.
it. All right.
Thanks,
Bye, everybody.
guys.
We'll see you tomorrow. Do the couch wave. Do the couch wave.
Hold on. Princess wave. Princess wave. Princess wave.
Bye, camera.